What is up, everybody? I'm NoLucksGiven, and today we are going to be looking at some Master League Go Battle League PvP battles in Pokemon Go. Specifically, I'm going to be using my Giratina Mewtwo Rhyperior team that I talked about in my previous video and corresponding Game Press article, Master League Pokemon that are also good in raid battles. The moves that we're going to be using on these Pokemon are Rhyperior is going to have a double rock move set plus superpower unlocked as an additional charge move. Our Mewtwo is going to be using Psycho Cut plus Shadow Ball and Focus Blast, which I also talked about in that previous video. And for our Giratina Origin form, we are going to be going with no additional move unlocked, just Shadow Claw and Ominous Wind. A few people say that the Shadow Ball is better, but I didn't want to spend the additional 100,000 Stardust to unlock the Shadow Ball. We're using my girlfriend's account here, and I didn't want to use the Stardust and Rare Candy to unlock that additional move when I didn't have to, but Ominous Wind will let you win the mirror matchup, as you'll see in a few of these raid battles here. I actually battle against a few opponents whose Giratinas only know Shadow Ball. So with that said, we are going to be looking at rank 8 trainer battles here today because I am using my girlfriend's account in this video. I wanted to try some more experimental stuff with the PvP unlocks on my main account, and we're only limited to 5 a day. So wanted to use these on her account here, and I think that also demonstrates part of why I think this team is good. Mewtwo is pretty accessible. Obviously, you had to do some EX raids, but Mewtwo Candy is at least pretty accessible, and not only accessible, but I think it's one of the better investments for a newer player, new account. Get that second charged move on your Mewtwo and be able to use it in a lot of different scenarios. As well, I think Giratina is one of the best investments for anybody, just because of how good it is in raid battles. Obviously, Rhyperior just had its community day, so if you were able to catch like a good level 35 or level 30 lucky Pokemon, it's not going to cost you that much Stardust, and you'll have plenty of candy to be able to power it up and unlock that second move. So we are going to be using an account that doesn't have that many other options on it, but I think these options are super accessible, and as you'll see, this can make a pretty good team. So let's jump into the battles here. We are going to be leading with our Giratina in this video just because it covers so much of the meta. With the Ominous Wind, it is also really going to pressure shields, and it does pressure this shield from the Metagross here. And at this point, it's probably an Earthquake, so we're going to go ahead and shield back. And it is an Earthquake, but we're going to beat our opponent to 3 Ominous Winds before they beat us to a second Earthquake. So them shielding there is definitely a mistake because we're just going to Ominous Wind away this Metagross, and there's not much that my opponent can do. Now my opponent switches into Giratina, and we have the energy lead because we were there first. So we're able to get off an Ominous Wind before them. And then I realize they have Shadow Ball. So we go ahead and shield that, and then we're able to fire off another Ominous Wind. And because we already blew their shields, we take their Pokemon out. Then we have Gardevoir. And I switch into Rhyperior, which I'm not sure on this matchup specifically. I maybe could have switched into the Mewtwo at this point. I didn't want them to beat me to a Shadow Ball, though in hindsight, Charm doesn't generate as much energy as a Psycho Cut, so I could have switched in the Mewtwo there and just Shadow Balled their Gardevoir, and we would have won that matchup too. For the second matchup here, we have kind of what looks to be the Giratina mirror, but my opponent has Giratina altered form, so there is a definite chance that they just have us beat here. we are going to go ahead and shield their Dragon Claw. They didn't shield our Ominous Wind. Like I said, I kind of like spending shields early, but they also kind of tricked me. They waited so long to Dragon Claw that I was like, yeah, sure, I'll shield. I almost got another Ominous Wind. Then they go ahead and fire that second Dragon Claw, and I'm just like, all right, you got me. But because we did use a shield, we are going to be able to beat them, but then they shield, we get the boost, so I have to shield again, obviously. But I probably shouldn't have. Again, I was a little bit thrown off by their energy management. I just got excited that I got the stat boost there, but our opponent does beat us in the lead here. But then, I don't know what happens, because we go Rhyperior and they go Raikou. And, yeah, I just don't know what's going on there. They switch into Groudon, so we throw off a superpower before switching ourselves. We can even lose this matchup against the Groudon, and, I mean, we'll be able to Shadow Ball it and kill it, but this Raikou in the back just isn't going to be able to challenge our Rhyperior. So they throw another Wild Charge at us. They just don't have the Shadow Ball. And, you know, on the surface, this does look a little bit sketchy because obviously my opponent only has so many limited options. But if they put the Groudon in against the Rhyperior, they would have been able to beat us, and then they can take their chances at Raikou versus Mewtwo. There's a decent chance that they could have won that one too, so maybe not if I would have been able to get an energy lead off of them, but a definite mistake by my opponent that we're able to capitalize on there. In match 3 here, we win the lead yet again with Giratina facing off against a Machamp, so I'm just going to fire off these Ominous Winds, maybe get a stat boost. There's really no need to shield here. It might have Rock Slide. It does. But even so, they got to switch out. They switch to Dragonite, so I go ahead and switch to Rhyperior. Now, this Dragon Claw from Dragonite is going to put some definite pressure on me, and I'm probably not going to be able to pressure them that well because everybody's got a bunch of shields. So I am able to take down the Dragonite, and then they go back into the Machamp. So now I just start firing off my superpowers, and I actually kind of like superpower. I didn't like it before I started using it, but now I like the fact that it kills your Pokemon immediately. I decided to go into the Mewtwo here just because I know that I can also tank these hits with the Mewtwo, and I want to potentially be able to save Giratina. Everybody, I still have a lot of shields going on here, so figure I might as well spend them. But basically, I won the lead in this matchup. My opponent switched. I was able to switch and counter their switch. And that's really all that this matchup was, just winning the rock, paper, scissors lead here. And, yeah, I do go wind up shielding. I wasn't really sure. But, yeah, at this point, this matchup is basically donezo. And we take them down. In our fourth matchup here, we get the Giratina Mirror, so we are both just going to start firing off shadow moves, and I fire off first with the Ominous Wind, so maybe I won the CMP tie, though my opponent has a higher CP. Nope, they just have Shadow Balls, so we are going to be able to shield their Shadow Balls. They will have to shield our Ominous Wind here if they don't want to lose their Giratina. But then we can shield this second Shadow Ball and then proceed to farm them down. So we win the lead. My opponent is still up a shield, but we've got the Ominous Wind, so I'm just going to throw out my Ominous Winds now and kind of chip down this Swampert. No, we get the shield, and then we get a little bit chipped down on it. I don't think my opponent really had to shield here, and their shield might have been better saved. They try to farm me down, I guess, but that just lets me use so many Shadow Balls against my opponent, and they've got Surf here too, so they don't have exactly the best stuff. They are going to wind up now surfing. No, they do have enough energy to Earthquake my Mewtwo. That was why I brought in Mewtwo rather than Rhyperior. But both of my remaining Pokemon should be able to deal with this Lugia pretty well, and they are going to finish off the Mewtwo with a Sky Attack, but then I get to bring in a fresh Rhyperior. I should be able to farm this Lugia down as long as it can't get a Hydro Pump off of me, and with this Sky Attack then I know I'm safe, and then I'm just able to superpower down the Swampert, and that's a GG. For the last battle here in this first set, we see a repeat of the first game. My opponent has a Metagross, so we kind of know how that matchup's going to go. I will be able to throw out 3 Ominous Winds before my opponent throws out 2 Earthquakes, but I get the boost. And so I go ahead and shield there, and it's just a Meteor Mash, but then I take it down with a bunch of charge moves. My opponent brings in Groudon, I throw another Ominous Wind, and... no, okay, nothing yet. I throw another Ominous Wind, and let's see it. Oh, not yet. Okay, never mind. I'm definitely not misremembering. I definitely get another boost, and I'm shielding here because since I already have the boost, my Pokemon, like the shields on my Pokemon are just worth that much more. So my opponent switches into a Giratina, they have the shield, but there I get another boost, and my opponent is running Shadow Ball, so I beat them to an additional Ominous Wind, and 1 Ominous Wind just completely takes them out there, and then that is a 5-0 for my first run with this team. And I think I get like an Oshawott. No, I get a Tepig. Yeah, same thing. No crazy good rewards there, but still a 5-0 is pretty good. For our second set of 5 here, same exact team. My opponent has a Gardevoir into my Giratina. Honestly, I don't know this matchup very well. I know that Charm, like I brought up before, Charm really isn't going to be pressuring shields, but they are going to be pressuring the Giratina as a whole, and yeah, so they are going to go ahead and use a shield. Then they wind up using their charge move when Giratina is basically a Charm away anyways. This Giratina might still be a little bit tough to deal with, but no, it actually just goes down in a few rock throws. And they have a Torterra there. So Torterra just shreds through my Rhyperior, and I throw out Mewtwo, and I've got Mewtwo, and I've got 2 shields, so hopefully that should be enough to deal with my opponent's Pokemon. I try to farm up energy there, but I actually wind up just taking a whole bunch of damage from the Frenzy Plant. Then my opponent brings in a Garchomp, and this is a huge mistake. I saw it was a Dragon-type Pokemon, and I just went, oh, it's a Dragon-type. It's got to be Dialga. And those were my legitimate thoughts. And I throw a Focus Blast thinking that's going to be enough to kill my opponent's Dialga, but obviously it was a Garchomp. And if I had just went for those 2 Shadow Balls, there was no way I was going to lose that. So I got a little bit risky, and then I just wasn't paying enough attention, and it winds up costing me my first loss here, and it was definitely an avoidable one that prevents us from getting another 5-0 here. So, off the back of that, you know what, that's okay. Wipe our hands clean of it. We get another really good matchup, Giratina into Machamp. So I'm just going to do my Ominous Wind thing. I don't care about these fighting type moves that Machamp is throwing at us. We're going to throw our Ominous Winds and take it down with relative ease. They are going to shield before swapping out to Togekiss, so we'll swap out to Rhyperior and just try to throw our own fast moves at Togekiss. We don't have to shield the Ancient Power. It's a little bit annoying if they get the buff, but they don't, and I decide to go ahead and throw that Rock Wrecker just so that way we preserve a little bit of life points on our Rhyperior there. And it was just not enough to be able to get to that superpower to challenge this Machamp. Not that I really care about this Machamp. My next 2 Pokemon wall it pretty hard anyways, and for some reason they are shielding it. So if they want to keep shielding this Machamp, I'm like, you know what, fine. You can Rock Slide my Giratina. I don't care. I've got Mewtwo in the back. That should be good. Mewtwo plus 2 shields against whatever. We're going to have a pretty good time here. So I throw in Mewtwo. It's actually a little bit of a tricky matchup because our Psycho Cuts don't deal any damage to it, but obviously our Shadow Balls will be super effective, so we will use a Shadow Ball, and that'll actually KO it. I thought we might have had to get to the second Shadow Ball there, which would have been fine because we had the 2 shields, but 1 Shadow Ball is actually just enough to KO Metagross. Our next matchup is Giratina versus Melmetal, and we do win the lead. My opponent switches out immediately, and they switch out into Dialga, and uh-oh, we're dealing with a real team here. I don't really have a great answer to Dialga. It's definitely one of the weaknesses on this team. For some reason, they throw a Thunder, which just baffles me because Iron Head is super effective and Thunder is resisted, and I'm pretty sure Thunder costs more energy. Maybe they cost about the same amount. I don't know, just a brain fart on my opponent, but it works because then they Iron Head and I don't shield and we lose our Rhyperior. Like I said, Rhyperior is kind of tough though because fighting against Dialga is kind of tough because if my opponent has shields up, they can shield the superpower. It is a pretty awkward matchup. Like you see, my opponent is going to do some superpower and switch out maneuvers there, and their last Pokemon is an Alolan, which definitely isn't as strong as their other 2 Pokemon, which are like top tier, but it's an interesting pick nonetheless. We are going to let our Giratina take a Wild Charge there, and it just wasn't able to get the thing off. And here's another interesting move with Mewtwo. I decided to go for 2 Shadow Balls, and I was able to do that because I have the shield here, but Meltan charges energy super fast. So we are going to beat it to a Shadow Ball, but just barely. That could have been bad if my opponent had Rock Slide. I probably should have just went for the Focus Blast since my opponent's shields were down, but we get the win anyways. A lot going on in that matchup, a lot to cover. Wasn't ready for everything that they threw at us there. Basically, yeah, Dialga's a good Pokemon. This team doesn't deal with Dialga in the lead very well, but otherwise, it's a pretty good team, and I'm basically just hoping my opponents aren't using Dialga in the lead. A lot of people will save it towards the back, and once those shields are out of the way, then I've got the Focus Blast, and I've got the Superpower, and I can actually deal with Dialga, but Dialga in the lead can definitely be scary for this team, and definitely puts me on the back foot. As you can see, I was trying to catch up the whole time, even with my commentary, so there you go. Going into the 4th match here, we see another Metagross, and that is going to be a pretty common lead. I do think it is a good Pokemon to lead with. Unfortunately, it just loses to Giratina, and that's why I was leading with Giratina. Kind of scoped out the metagame a little bit, saw was good, and realized that, yeah, I want to work with Giratina here. So not exactly sure why I stay in here and throw the Ominous Wind. Oh, that's right. I was trying to catch Togekiss as it threw in Ancient Power, so that way I could just throw in the Rhyperior and scoop it up. In hindsight, should have just switched to Rhyperior as soon as possible. Takes a long time for that Ancient Power to charge up. Then my opponent's going to bring in the Metagross and Meteor Mash me. I'm just farming up energy a little bit here before I start using those superpowers. And then I use the first one, it gets blocked. Then I've got the second one ready to go. So that's why it's a good idea to try to stockpile those superpowers when possible. I use the second power and faint immediately. That's pretty common. Then they bring in Metagross, and I don't shield the Meteor Mash, which deals a lot of damage to Mewtwo. And in hindsight, the fact that they only have 1 more Pokemon in the back means I should have just shielded that Meteor Mash. I definitely don't have any Dragon Claws that I need to shield here, but I throw a Shadow Ball out, switch over to Giratina, throw an Ominous Wind, then I will shield this Dragon Claw just because why not, and I should beat them to another Ominous Wind. No, I just take them out with Shadow Claw, and that is going to get us to a 3-1. I will say Dragonite is one of the other Pokemon that this team could potentially struggle with. That's why I have rock moves on my Rhyperior, though it hasn't been a problem with us for us in this set of 10 here. So pretty good things altogether. And for our last matchup, we have Giratina into Mewtwo. So again, just this video is showing off how good Giratina is, especially at these lower ranks, potentially just winning everything, forcing a shield for my opponent. I don't know if it's a Psy Strike or a Shadow Ball Mewtwo, and it is a Shadow Ball. I want to shield regardless. This time I make the right play. As soon as my opponent switches to Togekiss, I say, all right, Rhyperior, get in there. It can tank this Ancient Power, and I like having my Rhyperior with low health even, so that way once I fire off these superpowers, which I'm going to throw off against this Machamp here, throw off these superpowers, it can just go ahead and die. I would have liked to have been able to throw out both of the superpowers, but you take what you can get. So I'm going to Ominous Wind down this Machamp. I am just going to take the Rock Slide if that's what it happens to be. Yeah, it's a Rock Slide. And then I am going to, I thought, have a Mewtwo Mirror matchup in the back. My opponent switches over to Mewtwo. I just say, that's fine. I'm going to Ominous Wind you, and then I'm going to Ominous Wind your Machamp. None of these Pokemon are really threatening me. I'm not sure if it does wind up getting a final move off. I just let it kill me so that way I can show my opponent, oh no, it doesn't even kill me. That's right. They either undercharged or Cross Chop just deals so little damage that it doesn't kill my Giratina. So that is a 4-1, still enough on the free track to get the reward, and we get the Snivy. Nothing too exciting, but, you know, it could have been a Tornadus or a Thundurus or maybe even a good Pokemon. So pretty sweet showing here with this team that really the purpose of it was just that it was a minimal investment. All of these are raid-ready Pokemon, like I said. You can check out that other video and the full article. I'll have links to those in the video description to see more Pokemon that are good in both raids and in the Master League. Might have some more Master League content coming up soon. I'm not super sure, to be honest, but I know that I do have some Great League content that I've also talked about in the previous video. Basically, when the Great League came out, I did record some videos, and then Niantic was like, no, here, it's the Ultra League now. So that kind of surprised me, but I do have some ideas for how to turn those into videos still, and those will be coming up in the next week or so to prep for what is probably the official start. Season 1 of Go Battle League will probably be Great League, and it's the most accessible league to most people. For me, Master League was the most accessible league, and maybe for other people, some people that were really into raiding, people that were into Pokedraft as well, you might have all of these cool Master League ready Pokemon already powered up. So for me, I didn't have to prep at all for Master League. I basically had my run of the litter. I could play any team that I wanted. But for Great League, I did kind of have to learn the ropes. I never really was into PvP before Go Battle League launched. Only did like one Sylph Cup. But you'll hear about all of that in my next video if you subscribe and watch that video when it comes out. Leave a like to let me know if you like this video, and comment down below, or hit me up on Twitter at NoLucksGiven or Reddit u/NoLucksGiven, or on GamePress.gg, where you can find me writing articles and stuff like that. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'm NoLucksGiven. Peace!